Hi, I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person this evening. My name is Nancy Burns. I'm the Stoddard Curator of Prints, Drawings, and Photographs at the Worcester Art Museum. And I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about some photographs that I find interesting because I think that there's lots of ways of thinking about what makes a great photograph. There's technical prowess that, something about Ansel Adams and having these kind of meticulously crafted, shot and printed photographs. But then there are also great photographs that don't even use a camera, that they're these cameraless photographs that are made maybe by putting a leaf on top of a piece of treated paper that then turns blue when you drop it in water. And a type of photography that I find really interesting are photographs that you need to do kind of a double take or spend a moment to understand what exactly you're looking at or how something was made. Having said that, in this case, I've picked three photographs that, for different reasons, do kind of make you have a double take or seem to exist on two different planes. Something that might be the literal representation of what the camera was in front of, and then also, once printed, how do you look at it as a viewer? Do you see it as something different or as multiple things? So this is the first photograph I'm drawing your attention to, Copley Cat. And I have to admit, I don't know exactly where this is, but it's ostensibly an architectural space. But because of how it was framed and the attention to, high contrast, it becomes very planar and flat. And so it's reading as the thing that the camera was in front of, but also takes on this really kind of flat, graphic, modernist quality. And to me, that's very interesting. Also, this is a digital photograph that would have been, taken with a camera that shoots in color. I don't know if the artist happened to catch this in light such that it was actually appearing monochromatic, or if there was work done post-production that shifted this into a grayscale monochromatic photograph. But because of its ability to kind of exist as both three-dimensional and very planar, I find this very interesting, and it's technically very well executed. Moving on, a second photograph that I wanted to draw people's attention to is this photograph by James Hunt. And what I find interesting about it is, again, it is a technically well executed photograph, but what are you looking at? Now, I'll tell you what the title is, but upon immediately looking at this, it seems to exist as something that could be almost like an abstract painting or a pastel. But we also know that it is a photograph of something out in the world, and this is a spillway at the golden hour. So, water rushing over, and, we're at the golden hour, it gives us a clue that it's likely sunset, for example. So we are seeing something that is a document of a place and a time. But it reads as, again, you see how flat this becomes because of the motion of the water? I find it really interesting when artists are able to do that. One thing that you may also want to keep in mind is, like the photograph that we had just seen beforehand, it's taken at a very small piece of real estate. So we don't have a lot of information over here to situate us in where exactly the photograph was taken. And that's part of the reason it was successful at transcending, appearing as a very literal copy of the world or document of the world. And just while we're here, I will note that Roberta Oakley's photograph above does a bit of that kind of work as well, where in here, she uses the reflection in the water, but it has the effect of kind of reading almost like watercolor or not necessarily a photograph. And part of how she was successful doing that is that she doesn't give all of the foliage above. She gives you just enough to know that this is reflected, and what we're seeing here, we know continues up here. So you kind of are getting, by looking at the reflection, you're actually getting a bit of information about what's not in the photograph. This is the last object that I have chosen that I wanted to point out to you. And, looking at this, we can read what it is representationally. I mean, it's kind of hard because it's very, very light in color and pastel. But it reads like a watercolor as opposed to being a photograph. And this was taken with film, an analog photograph. But the decision to print it on something like a toothy watercolor paper actually makes this not look like a photograph anymore. And this is an example of, while I can read what the representation is, what had been actually photographed, the use of materials by the artist, Mr. Craig Poehler, his use of materials actually in many ways changes how you look at the photograph as well. And I think that this was a really great example of an artist who understands how the act of printing is in itself going to impact the way a photograph is going to appear and be received by its viewer. I did want to, at the last minute, kind of quickly point out one other photograph, which this photograph by Michael Zeitz is, it's very challenging to work in a panoramic capacity because the nature of a panoramic photograph causes it to bend. And knowing how far you can go in doing that is very challenging. But also in this case, the artist has taken advantage of that effect. So we have the kind of this appearance of a curved ceiling, which then, the artist has taken advantage of that in creating kind of a mise-en-scène where the use of a panoramic shot is actually really conducive to documenting the environment. And I mean, I will say that I have a warm, soft spot for photographers who choose to photograph things that aren't necessarily beautiful in the conventional sense. But of course, this is like, look at the color that's been used. He's found what makes this a kind of almost studio-like space. It could be something that it actually oddly reminds me of Impressionist painting, given the colors and the use of light and how the space is framed. So I'm also find this a very interesting photograph as well. In closing, I first want to say thank you to Small Stones. I can't tell you how generous and organized this staff is, and I've really enjoyed working with this organization for multiple years now. And I think it's also great to see how creative and interesting our own community is in the arts. And in my case, I'm particularly interested in the work you all are doing in photography. So thank you for allowing me to join you virtually, and best of luck in your art making in the coming year.